Part 2. Preparation and Understanding. News of the challenge spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Within hours, every major news network was covering the story. A human had challenged a Crethean Supreme Commander to single combat for his council seat. It was the most dramatic thing to happen in galactic politics in centuries. Betting markets opened on 1,000 worlds. The odds against Hana were 10,000 to 1. Some bookmakers offered even worse odds. It was considered the safest bet in the galaxy. On Earth, people watched the footage of Hana being struck and making her challenge. The response was mixed. Some called her a hero, a warrior who stood up for humanity's dignity. Others called her reckless, saying she had thrown away her life and possibly damaged Earth's chances for peaceful admission to the Council. The governments of Earth were in emergency sessions trying to decide how to respond. Some wanted to pull Hana back, to apologize and try to salvage diplomatic relations. Others argued that backing down now would make Earth look even weaker. In the end, they decided to support her, not because they thought she could win, but because abandoning her would be worse than letting her fight. Earth's president made a statement saying that Hana had acted within her authority and within galactic law. Earth would stand by its representative, whatever the outcome. On the Sovereign Ring Station, Hana sat in her quarters and tried to process what she had done. Her face hurt. The medical technicians had offered to heal the bruise completely, but she refused. She wanted everyone to see what Vexthor had done. The physical evidence mattered. Besides, pain helped her focus. She wasn't alone. 3 other humans had been on the station as part of Earth's diplomatic mission. Dabin was the mission's security chief, a former soldier who had served in Earth's space defense forces. Minji was the cultural specialist, an anthropologist who had studied alien societies for years. Yuna was the technical expert, an engineer who understood the station's systems better than most aliens who worked there. They all looked at Hana like she had lost her mind. "You challenged him to single combat," Dabin said for the 4th time. He still couldn't seem to believe it. Vexthor, the warrior who has killed more beings in single combat than some armies kill in wars. "I know who he is," Hana said calmly. She was reviewing files on her datapad, scanning through information about Crethean physiology and combat history. "Do you have a death wish?" Minji asked. She wasn't angry, just confused, because there are easier ways to die than being torn apart by a Crethean warrior. "I'm not planning to die," Hana said. Yuna laughed, but it was a nervous sound. "Hana, I've run the numbers. I've analyzed every recorded fight Vexthor has been in. He's never been injured seriously. He's never even been pushed to his limits. He ends most fights in under a minute. You're human. You're 5'4". You weigh maybe 50 kilograms. He could literally bite your head off." "Probably," Hana agreed. "But he won't get the chance, and how can you be so calm?" Dabin demanded. "In 3 days, you're going to walk into an arena with something that was literally designed by evolution to kill things. How are you not terrified?" "I am terrified," Hana said simply. "I'm so scared I can barely sleep. But being scared doesn't change what needs to happen. Earth needs this. We need a seat on the Council, and they were never going to give it to us through normal channels. We're too new, too weak, too human. This is our chance." "This is suicide," Minji said quietly. Hana finally looked up from her datapad. "Maybe, but I've been studying galactic law for 3 years. The ancient rites exist for a reason. They were put in place to prevent powerful species from abusing weaker ones in the council chamber. The founders understood that words only matter if there are consequences for violence. Vexthor could have dismissed me with words. He chose violence instead. That was his mistake." "His mistake?" Yuna shook her head. "He's going to kill you." "How is that a mistake?" "Because he thinks like a predator," Hana said. "Predators rely on overwhelming force and intimidation. They're used to prey that runs or submits. I'm not going to do either. That's going to confuse him. And confused opponents make mistakes." Over the next 3 days, Hana prepared. But she didn't prepare the way anyone expected. She didn't train in combat techniques or practice with weapons. She had trained in martial arts back on Earth. But she knew that 3 days of practice wouldn't make her a match for Vexthor. Instead, she studied. She reviewed every piece of information Earth's intelligence services had on Crethean biology. She learned about their muscle structure, their cardiovascular system, their nervous system. She learned that Cretheans were incredibly strong, but that their endurance was limited. They were evolved for ambush hunting, for the explosive burst of speed and power that brought down prey quickly. Long fights weren't their strength. She studied recordings of Vex Thor's previous challenges. She watched how he moved, how he attacked, how he ended fights. She noted patterns. He always went for the quick kill. He relied on his superior strength and speed. He had never needed strategy, because he had never faced an opponent who could survive his initial assault. She studied the arena itself, reading technical specifications and looking at recordings of previous trials. She learned about the weapons that would be available, the size and layout of the space, the environmental controls. Information was her weapon. Understanding was her armor. Minji came to visit on the second day. She found Hana doing something unexpected. Hana was sleeping, not reviewing files or planning strategy, just sleeping peacefully in her quarters. "Shouldn't you be training or something?" Minji asked when Hana woke up. "I am training," Hana said. "I'm training my body to be rested and ready. Fighting when you're exhausted is stupid. Fighting when you're well-rested and thinking clearly is smart." "You're really not going to practice fighting at all?" "I've been practicing martial arts since I was 8, Hana said. 3 more days won't make me significantly better. But 3 days of good sleep, good food, and mental preparation will make me sharper. That's what I need." On the 3rd day, Hana received a visitor she didn't expect. High Arbiter Orlith came to her quarters. The ancient being was humanoid in shape, but clearly not human. Their skin had a faint luminescence, and their eyes were completely silver. No one knew how old Orlith was. Some said they had been alive when the council was founded thousands of years ago. "May I enter?" Orlith asked. "Of course, High Arbiter," Hana said, surprised. Orlith moved into the room with a grace that suggested they weren't quite bound by normal physics. "I came to ask you something, Hana of Earth. Do you know why the ancient rites were created?" Hana thought about it. "To prevent powerful species from abusing weaker ones without consequence." "That is part of it," Orlith said. "But there is more." "The ancient rites exist because the founders of the council understood something important. They understood that physical power is not the only kind of power that matters. Intelligence matters, adaptability matters, the will to survive matters. They created the ancient rites to remind the galaxy that predators are not naturally superior to prey. They simply have different advantages." "I'm not sure I understand," Hana said. Orleth's silver eyes seemed to look through her. "On your planet Earth, humans were prey once, yes? Hunted by larger, stronger creatures? Yes, for millions of years. And yet you survived. You thrived. You eventually became the dominant species on your world. How did prey become predators?" Hana considered this. "We used tools. We worked together. We learned to think ahead and plan. We were smarter than the things that hunted us." "Exactly," Orlith said. "You were never the strongest or the fastest. But you were adaptable. You were intelligent. You refused to accept your role as prey. The ancient rites honor this truth. They give the clever a chance against the strong. Not a guarantee, but a chance." "Are you saying I can win?" Hana asked. "I am saying that victory is possible through many paths," Orlith replied. "Vex Thor will try to win through strength and fear. You must win through understanding and adaptation. Study your enemy. Understand the arena. Use every advantage you can find. And remember that predators, for all their power, have a weakness." "What weakness?" "They are used to winning," Orlith said. "They expect to win. When a predator's prey fights back effectively, it creates doubt. Doubt leads to mistakes. Mistakes lead to defeat." After Orlith left, Hana returned to her studies with renewed focus. She reviewed everything one more time. Krethian physiology, combat patterns, Arena SP mental model of how the fight would go, planning for dozens of different scenarios. That night, her final night before the trial, Hana slept well. She dreamed of Earth, of the small apartment where she grew up, of her family who would be watching from billions of kilometers away. She dreamed of humanity's future among the stars, of all the possibilities that would open if she could somehow win this impossible fight. When she woke, it was the day of the trial. Hana dressed in simple clothes suitable for combat. She ate a good breakfast. She spent an hour in meditation, clearing her mind and preparing herself mentally. She wasn't trying to pump herself up or build false confidence. She was simply accepting reality. In a few hours, she would either win the most important fight in human history, or she would die trying. Either way, she would make sure the galaxy remembered this day. The trial arena was ancient, built when the council was first formed thousands of years ago. It was a perfect circle, 100 meters across, with a floor made of dark metal that could withstand almost any attack. Energy barriers surrounded the arena, strong enough to contain explosions or energy weapons. Above and around the barriers, observation decks rose in tiers, packed with delegates from across the galaxy. Holographic cameras floated everywhere, recording from every angle. This fight would be watched by billions. Hana entered from the south entrance. The roar of the crowd hit her like a physical force. Most were cheering for Vexthor, or perhaps cheering for the spectacle they expected. Some sections were silent. The human delegation sat together, their faces showing fear and hope in equal measure. Other prey species watched with interest. If a human could challenge a Krethian, maybe they could too. She walked to the center of the arena. The floor was cold under her bare feet. She wore simple combat clothes, flexible material that wouldn't restrict her movement. No armor, no enhancements, just Hana and whatever weapons she could claim from the arena's weapon racks. Vexthor entered from the north, and the crowd's noise doubled. He wore his ceremonial battle armor, black plates that covered his chest and shoulders, but left his arms and legs free for movement. The armor was traditional rather than practical. Krethian warriors believed that too much armor showed weakness. Vexthor had never needed armor to win a fight. He wasn't about to start now. High Arbiter Orleth appeared above the arena, their form projected large enough for everyone to see. "We are gathered to witness trial by combat, invoked under the ancient rites. The challenged Hana of Earth. The challenger, Supreme Commander Vexthor of the Krethian Empire. The rules are simple. Fight until one yields or falls. Melee weapons only, chosen from the arena's racks. Any natural biological capability is permitted. There are no other restrictions." Orleth paused, looking down at both fighters. "This trial will determine the rightful holder of the Krethian council seat. May the worthy prevail. Choose your weapons." 2 racks rose from the floor, one near each fighter. They held various weapons from different cultures: swords, spears, axes, and stranger things designed for alien biologies. Vexthor walked to his rack and selected a massive war blade, a cleaver-like weapon as long as Hana was tall. He swung it experimentally and it cut through the air with a sound like tearing metal. The crowd cheered. Hana approached her rack more carefully. She studied the options, her mind racing through possibilities. She selected a short blade, barely longer than a large knife. Then she picked up something that made the crowd murmur in confusion. It was a coil of smart wire, thin as thread but incredibly strong. Normally used by mechanics to repair delicate equipment, not a weapon at all. Vexthor saw her choices and laughed. "A knife and a piece of string? This is what Earth's champion chooses? I almost pity you." Hana didn't respond. She was testing the smart wire, checking its length and flexibility. It was about 20 meters long, with a control unit that would let her make it rigid or flexible on command. "Perfect. Begin." Orleth's voice rang out. Vexthor charged immediately. This was how Krethians fought. Overwhelming speed and power meant to end the fight before it truly started. He covered half the arena in seconds, his warblade raised for a strike that would cut Hana in half. Hana didn't run backward. Running backward would be too slow. Instead, she ran forward and to the side, moving inside his reach at an angle. The blade whistled through the air where she had been, missing by centimeters. She felt the wind of its passage. As she moved past him, her knife flashed out. Not at Vexthor himself, but at his armor. She struck the joint where his shoulder plate connected to the chest piece, slicing through the straps. It was a tiny cut, doing no damage. The crowd booed. They had expected blood. Vexthor spun faster than something his size should be able to move. His tail whipped around, a weapon in itself trying to sweep her legs. Hana saw it coming and jumped, letting the tail pass under her feet. She landed, and immediately rolled forward, coming up several meters away. "Stand and fight!" Vexthor roared. But Hana wasn't interested in fighting the way he expected. She started moving around the arena's edge, keeping distance between them. Vexthor pursued, his war blade swinging in patterns meant to corner her or force her into a mistake. Every time he got close, she evaded by the smallest margin, using her smaller size and agility to slip past his attacks. The crowd started to understand what they were watching. This wasn't a fight, it was a hunt. But the roles were confused. Vexthor was the predator, but he was chasing prey that refused to behave correctly. Each time Hana evaded, she left something behind. A strand of smart wire stretched across the floor at ankle height, or a small amount of lubricant from the arena's mechanical systems, which she smeared on the floor when Vexthor wasn't looking. Or she made a cut in the floor itself with her knife, creating a tiny groove that meant nothing by itself. 5 minutes passed. Vexthor was still strong, still fast, but Hana could see the first signs of strain. His breathing was heavier, his movements were slightly slower. Krethians were built for quick kills, not prolonged fights. Meanwhile, Hana's breathing was controlled and steady. Humans were endurance hunters. They could run all day if needed. 10 minutes. Vexthor's frustration was visible now. He had expected this to be over in seconds. Instead, this tiny human kept slipping away, kept avoiding his attacks by margins so small they seemed impossible. He was starting to make mistakes, swinging too hard and leaving himself off balance, charging too fast and having to turn awkwardly. The crowd was silent now, watching with something like disbelief. This wasn't how these things were supposed to go. Prey didn't toy with predators. 15 minutes. Vexthor paused, breathing heavily. "Stop running and face me." Hana stopped moving. She stood in the center of the arena, holding her knife in one hand and the smart wire control in the other. "I've been facing you this whole time. You just haven't realized it." Vexthor looked around and finally saw what she had done. The arena floor was crisscrossed with nearly invisible strands of smart wire. Every time he had chased her, every path she had led him on, she had been laying a trap. The wires formed a complex web, with her at the center. "Clever," Vexthor admitted. "But wires won't stop me." He charged one final time, putting everything he had into one devastating rush. He would smash through the wires, take whatever cuts they gave him, and end this human's life with one strike. It was a predator's solution. Overwhelming force applied directly. Hana waited until he was in mid-leap, committed to the attack, and unable to change direction. Then she triggered the smart wire control. Every strand she had laid activated at once, contracting and becoming rigid. The web tightened around Vexthor like a snare. He crashed to the ground hard, wrapped in wires that cut into his scales. His armor, already weakened by Hana's earlier cuts to its straps, fell away in pieces. He struggled, his immense strength starting to tear through the wires. In a few seconds, he would be free. Hana was already moving. She had planned for this moment, visualized it 100 times. She ran across the top of Vexthor's back as he struggled on the ground. Her feet found purchase on his scales. Before he could react, she was behind his head, her knife pressed against the back of his neck, right at the joint where spine met skull. "Yield," she said quietly. Vexthor froze. He could feel the blade's pressure, knew exactly where it was positioned. One thrust, and it would sever his spinal cord. Even Krethian biology couldn't heal that. He would. Billions of beings across the galaxy watched and waited. The apex predator, held at knife point by prey that refused to die. Vexthor's mind raced through possibilities. He could still fight. He could throw himself backward, crush her under his weight. He might survive the knife thrust if he moved fast enough. But might wasn't certain, and something else stopped him. This human had beaten him fairly. She had used intelligence where he relied on strength. She had planned where he had simply attacked. She had done exactly what Orleth said. She had made him doubt. "I yield," Vexthor said. The words came out like poison, but they came out. Hana removed the knife and stepped back. She deactivated the smart wire and it went slack. Vexthor slowly stood up, his armor in pieces around him. He looked at Hana, with an expression that mixed anger, shock, and something that might have been respect. The crowd erupted. Some sections' cheers sat in stunned silence. The human delegation was crying and hugging each other. The Krathian section sat frozen, unable to process what they had just witnessed. High Arbiter Orlith appeared above them again. The trial has concluded. Supreme Commander Vexthor has yielded. By the ancient rites and the laws of this council, the Krathian seat passes to Hana of Earth. Energy barriers dropped. Medical teams rushed in to check both fighters. Hana had some bruises and cuts from her acrobatic movements, nothing serious. Vexthor had deeper cuts from the smart wire and his pride was shattered, but he would survive. As the medical team worked on him, Vexthor looked at Hana. "How?" he asked simply. Hana understood the question. How had Pooh fought like a Krathian? "I fought like a human. We're not built for strength or speed. We're built for endurance and planning. We win by bay." She looked up at the observation decks, at the thousands of alien faces watching her. Some looked amazed, others looked angry, many looked afraid. Good. Let them be afraid. Fear meant respect, and respect meant survival. The prey species had shown its teeth. The galaxy would never forget it. The ceremony happened within hours of the trial's conclusion. There was no time for celebration or rest. The ancient rites demanded immediate transfer of authority. Hana was escorted from the arena to the council chamber, still wearing her combat clothes, still marked with the evidence of her fight. The galaxy needed to see this happen while the shock was fresh. The council chamber looked different now. Where before it had seemed vast and intimidating, now it felt like a place Hana belonged. High Arbiter Orlith stood at the center, holding a ceremonial staff that represented council authority. Every delegate was present, standing rather than sitting. This was a historic moment and everyone knew it. "The trial has concluded," Orlith announced. "The laws are clear. The ancient rites have been fulfilled. Vexthor of the Krathian Empire yielded to Hana of Earth. Therefore, by blood and law, by strength and right, the Krathian council seat passes to the victor." Two guards brought forward the physical throne, an enormous seat made of black metal and decorated with Krathian symbols of war and dominance. It had held Krathian warriors for 3,000 years. Hana looked at it and felt the weight of history. She was about to change something fundamental about how the galaxy worked. She sat down. The throne was too large for her human frame. Her feet barely touched the ground. She looked small and young sitting in a chair made for beings twice her size, but she sat straight, her expression calm, and met the eyes of every delegate who looked at her. "The transfer is complete," Orlith said. "Councillor Hana now represents the Krathian Empire in this body. She holds all votes, all authorities, and all responsibilities of that position." The Krathian delegation stood in shock. Their section of the chamber felt like a tomb. Their supreme commander had been defeated by a prey species. Worse, a human now officially represented their empire in galactic politics. It was the deepest shame their culture could imagine. But Hana's first action surprised everyone. She stood and addressed the council. "I claim this seat not for conquest but for opportunity. Earth petitioned for council representation through proper channels. We were dismissed. We were told we were too young, too weak, too insignificant. Today proved those assumptions wrong." She paused, letting her words sink in. "However, I understand the position I now hold. I represent the Krathian Empire's interests in this council, not just Earth's. That creates a conflict. Therefore, I propose a solution. Earth will petition again for its own council seat through standard diplomatic channels. In exchange for that seat being granted, I will return the Krathian seat to a representative chosen by the Krathian government." The chamber erupted in discussion. Delegates argued in dozens of languages. This was unprecedented. Victors of trials didn't simply give up their prizes. They held them as trophies, as proof of their superiority. But Hana had thought this through. She didn't want to rule the Krathian Empire. She wanted Earth to have a voice. By offering to return the seat in exchange for Earth's admission, she gave the council a peaceful way forward. More importantly, she showed that humans could be reasonable and diplomatic even when holding power. High Arbiter Orlith raised a hand for silence. "The proposal is noted. However, admission to the council requires a lengthy evaluation process. This typically takes years. Then we will wait years if needed," Hana said. "But I will continue to hold this seat and represent Krathian interests fairly, until that process completes. I invoke my right as a council member to speak on behalf of the species whose seat I hold. It was another clever move. By promising to represent Krethian interests, she made it harder for them to oppose her. And by publicly stating she would return the seat eventually, she positioned herself as reasonable and trustworthy. The next weeks were chaos. News of the trial and its aftermath spread across the galaxy. Reactions varied wildly by species and culture. Prey species celebrated. Predator species were confused and angry. Diplomatic species saw opportunity for change. Military species saw a threat to the established order. On Earth, Hana became an instant hero. Her face appeared on every newsfeed. Children dressed up as her for school events. Politicians competed to associate themselves with her success. But the government also understood the danger. Earth now had a powerful voice in galactic politics, but they had gained it through violence. That would shape how the galaxy saw humanity for generations. Hana moved into an office within the Sovereign Ring Station. It was the same office Vexthor had used for decades. His belongings had been removed, but traces of his presence remained. Claw marks on the desk, scorch marks on the walls from some past anger. The room smelled faintly of Krethian pheromones, that hot metal scent she remembered from their fight. She spent her first days reading reports and learning the scope of her new responsibilities. The Krethian Empire controlled hundreds of star systems. They had trade agreements with dozens of species. They maintained military alliances and treaties dating back centuries. She was now responsible for representing all of those interests in council votes and debates. It was overwhelming. Hana had trained as a diplomat, but she was 25 years old and had been in space for less than a year. Now she held one of the most powerful positions in galactic politics. She relied heavily on Minji, Dabin, and Yuna. Earth also sent additional staff to help, experts in law, military affairs, and economics. 2 weeks after the trial, Hana faced her first real test. A dispute had erupted between the Krethian Empire and a neighboring species called the Talox, over mining rights and a border system. The Krethians wanted to send warships to intimidate the Talox into backing down. It was exactly the kind of aggressive posturing that had made the Krethian Empire feared throughout the galaxy. As the Krethian representative, Hana was expected to support their position. The Krethian government sent her detailed briefings explaining why the system rightfully belonged to them, and why military pressure was the appropriate response. They expected her to vote for military action in the council. Instead, Hana called for negotiations. She reached out to the Talox ambassador and proposed a compromise. The system's resources would be divided based on which species had better existing claims to specific planets and asteroids. Both sides would reduce their military presence in the area. A neutral monitoring station would be established to prevent future disputes. The Krethian government was furious. They sent angry messages accusing Hana of weakness and betrayal. Some called for her removal, though they had no legal method to do so. She had won the seat fairly under laws they themselves had helped create. But the Talox agreed to the compromise. So did the council. The dispute was resolved without violence. Several other species that had been watching the situation carefully took note. Perhaps this human counselor would be different from her predecessor. Not everyone was pleased. 3 weeks after the trial, Hana received a private communication request from Vexthor. She hesitated, then accepted. His face appeared on her screen, that massive predatory visage she had faced in combat. "Counselor," he said, the title clearly painful for him to use. "Commander," Hana replied neutrally. "You are making a mistake," Vexthor said. "The Krethian Empire maintains peace through strength. Our neighbors respect us because they fear us. Your diplomatic solutions make us look weak." "Or they make you look reasonable," Hana suggested. "Fear is one way to maintain peace, but it requires constant vigilance and creates constant enemies. Respect through fairness might last longer." "You know nothing of our culture," Vexthor growled. "You are human. You cannot understand what it means to be Krethian." "You're right," Hana agreed. "I don't understand your culture completely. But I understand power and politics. Your empire has made many enemies through your aggressive policies. Those enemies have been quiet because they feared your military. But that fear won't last forever. Eventually, your enemies will unite against you. When that happens, you'll need allies, not just subjects who fear you." Vexthor was silent for a moment. "Is this why you offered to return our seat?" You believe we will be grateful and become Earth's ally. I offer to return your seat because it's the right thing to do, Hana said. Earth wants partnership, not domination. If that eventually leads to friendship between our species, excellent. If not, at least we tried. You are either very wise or very foolish, Vexthor said. I have not decided which. Maybe both, Hana suggested. Time will tell. The conversation ended, but it marked a shift. Vexthor began sending her information about Crethean political situations, unofficial advice on how to handle certain negotiations. He still disagreed with her methods, but he seemed to respect that she was trying to represent his people's interests fairly. As weeks became months, Hana established a pattern. She would listen to Crethean government positions, consider them carefully, and then make decisions based on what she believed was truly in their long-term interests. Sometimes that meant supporting their aggressive positions. Often it meant finding diplomatic solutions they hadn't considered. The Crethean people themselves were divided in their response. Traditionalists saw her as a shameful reminder of their supreme commander's defeat. But younger Cretheans, especially those who lived on worlds far from the Empire's capital, began to see benefits. Disputes that would have previously required military intervention were solved through negotiation. Resources that went to maintaining military dominance could be invested in infrastructure and research. Meanwhile, Earth's petition for its own council seat moved forward. The usual years-long process was accelerated due to the unique circumstances. Evaluation teams visited Earth, studied human culture and technology, and interviewed human leaders. The reports were generally positive. Humans were adaptable, innovative, and apparently capable of handling galactic politics despite their youth as a spacefaring species. 6 months after the trial, the Council voted on Earth's admission. It passed with surprising ease. Several species that would normally oppose adding a new member supported the motion. Hana had spent those months building relationships, making deals, and proving that humans could be trusted partners. The day Earth's admission was approved, Hana stood before the Council one final time as the Crethean representative. With Earth's admission secured, I fulfill my promise. I return the Crethean seat to its rightful owners. The Crethean government has nominated Commander Vexthor to resume his position. I support that nomination. It was a political masterstroke. By supporting Vexthor's return, Hana showed she held no grudge and respected Crethean traditions. Vexthor, for his part, had spent 6 months watching Hana work. He had seen her represent his people fairly, even when it cost her politically. He had learned that maybe, just maybe, there were other ways to maintain power besides fear and violence. The seat was returned. Vexthor resumed his position. But everything had changed. Earth had its own seat now, represented by a new ambassador named Jiwan, and the Crethean Empire had learned that defeat wasn't always the end. Sometimes it was the beginning of something better. 1 year after the trial that changed the galaxy, Hana stood on an observation deck of the Sovereign Ring Station, looking out at the stars. So much had happened in 12 months. Earth had gone from being ignored to having a respected voice in galactic affairs. Humans were no longer seen as insignificant children playing at politics. They were recognized as a species that could adapt, think strategically, and refuse to accept defeat. But the journey had not been easy or safe. The victory over Vexthor had made humanity visible, and visibility brought dangers as well as opportunities. 3 months after Earth gained its own council seat, the threats began. A coalition of predator species, led by representatives from the Talox Dominion and Vreel Collective, started working against human interests. They couldn't challenge Earth's council seat directly, so they attacked in other ways. They blocked human trade agreements. They spread propaganda about human aggression and unpredictability. They pressured species that had formed friendships with Earth to distance themselves. The coalition was careful to stay within legal bounds. They weren't violating any laws, just using political pressure and economic leverage. It was the kind of slow, subtle warfare that had maintained the galactic power structure for millennia. The old empires reminding the new arrivals who really ran things. Hana had expected this. She had warned Earth's government that gaining respect would come with a price. The predator species felt threatened by humanity's unconventional approach to galactic politics. They saw Earth's emphasis on cooperation and innovation as a challenge to their dominance through strength philosophy. The real test came when the coalition manufactured a crisis. A human mining ship operating in a system near Talox space reported finding valuable rare minerals. The Talox immediately claimed the system had been historically theirs, despite no evidence of previous occupation. They demanded the humans leave immediately or face military consequences. It was a trap. If humans backed down, they would look weak, confirming that they only had courage when facing isolated opponents. If they refused to leave, the Talox would have justification for military action. Earth's ships were no match for the Talox fleet. The coalition was betting that Earth would either submit or be destroyed, either outcome serving their purposes. Hana attended the emergency council session where the dispute was presented. The Talox ambassador laid out their case with practiced skill, making it sound like humans were the aggressors, violating ancient territorial claims. The coalition members spoke in support, painting humanity as reckless newcomers who needed to be taught respect for established boundaries. When it was Hana's turn to speak, she surprised everyone by agreeing. The Talox are correct. This situation cannot stand. The human delegation looked at her in shock. Had she just sided against her own species? Then Hana continued. A situation where border disputes are resolved through military threats rather than evidence and law cannot stand. Therefore, I propose we establish a new mechanism for the Council. Any territorial dispute involving unclear historical claims should be submitted to a neutral arbitration panel. Both sides present evidence, the panel makes a binding decision, and the Council enforces it. No military threats, no political pressure, just facts and law. It was brilliant. She had turned a trap into an opportunity for reform. The coalition couldn't oppose the idea without admitting they preferred military intimidation to legal process. The prey species and diplomatic species immediately supported the proposal. Within hours, it had enough votes to pass. The Talox were forced to submit their claim to arbitration. The neutral panel reviewed the evidence and found no legitimate historical basis for their territorial claim. The system was declared open for legal development by any species, including humans. The Talox had to back down publicly, and the coalition's attempt to intimidate Earth had backfired completely. But Hana knew this was just the beginning. The old powers wouldn't give up easily. They would keep testing humanity, keep looking for weaknesses to exploit. Earth needed more than clever political maneuvering. They needed actual capability to defend themselves and their interests. Back on Earth, the government had been investing heavily in military development, not by copying alien technology, but by innovating based on human strengths. If humans couldn't match the raw power of ships built by species that had been developing them for thousands of years, they would find other advantages. Human engineers developed ships that were smaller and more agile than standard warships. They incorporated AI systems more advanced than most aliens used, because humans had fewer cultural taboos about artificial intelligence. They created weapons based on Earth's diverse military history, from ancient strategy to modern warfare concepts. 6 months after the arbitration victory, Earth unveiled its first defense fleet. 12 ships, each one incorporating technologies the galaxy had never seen combined in quite that way. They weren't the most powerful ships in the galaxy, but they were creative, unpredictable, and crewed by humans who had studied alien combat doctrine and knew how to counter it. The revelation sent ripples through galactic military circles. Humanity had teeth now, not just clever words. Species that had considered testing Earth militarily reconsidered. The combination of diplomatic skill and actual military capability made humanity a much more complex challenge. Meanwhile, something unexpected was happening. The relationship between humans and Krethians was evolving. Vexthor had returned to his council seat, but he was different. His 6 months watching Hana had changed his perspective. He still believed in strength, still valued martial prowess, but he had learned that strength came in many forms. Vexthor began voting differently on council matters. Not always with Earth, but more thoughtfully than before. He proposed reforms to how the council handled disputes, drawing on ideas he had seen Hana implement. Some traditionalist Krethians accused him of being influenced by prey species. Others saw him as evolving, bringing new strategies to maintain their empire's power. One day, Vexthor requested a private meeting with Hana. They met in a neutral conference room, just the two of them. It was the first time they had been alone together since the trial. "I have been thinking," Vexthor began, "about what happened between us. About what it meant, and what did it mean? Hana asked. I thought it meant I had grown weak, that I had failed my people by losing to a prey species. But I have watched the galaxy this past year. I have seen how species respond to your approach compared to mine. And I begin to think that perhaps strength and weakness are not as simple as I believed. Hana nodded. Strength is about more than physical power. It's about adaptability, resilience, the ability to change when change is needed. The Crethean Empire has ruled through fear for 3,000 years, Vexthor said. We have been successful. But I see now that fear creates enemies who wait for any sign of weakness. Your approach creates allies who support you even when you stumble. Are you saying you want to change how the Crethean Empire operates? Hana asked carefully. I am saying that perhaps there is something to learn from how humans approach power. You offer partnership while maintaining strength. You show respect while demanding it in return. It is different from our way. But different is not always wrong. This conversation led to something unprecedented. Over the following months, Earth and the Crethean Empire began developing a working relationship. Not an alliance exactly, but something like mutual respect between former enemies. They started coordinating on certain council votes, supporting each other's positions when their interests aligned. This partnership terrified the coalition of predator species that opposed Earth. If humans and Cretheans could work together, the old balance of power might truly change. They accelerated their efforts to undermine human influence. The crisis came during a council vote on opening new territories for colonization. There were 3 systems up for consideration, all potentially rich in resources. The coalition proposed that only species with significant military presence could claim colonization rights. It was a transparent attempt to exclude younger species like humanity. Hana stood to oppose the proposal. This policy would create a permanent hierarchy where military power determines access to resources. It would prevent developing species from ever growing strong enough to challenge established empires. That's not cooperation. That's not the purpose of this council. The coalition ambassador of real named Kesh responded aggressively. Your species has been in space for less than 1 human lifetime. You have no right to dictate policy to empires that have ruled the stars for millennia. Perhaps if humans had spent more time building strength and less time building friendships, you would deserve a voice in such matters. The chamber fell silent. It was a direct insult, implying that humanity's approach was weak and that their council seat was undeserved. Kesh was trying to provoke Hana into an emotional response that would make her look immature. Instead, Hana smiled. It was the same smile she had given Vexthor right after he slapped her. Ambassador Kesh, you're absolutely right. Earth has only been traveling in space for 1 human lifetime. In that time, we've gained a council seat, developed defensive capabilities that concern you enough to create a coalition against us, and established working relationships with dozens of species, including former enemies. Imagine what we'll accomplish in 2 lifetimes, or 10. She let that sink in before continuing. As for military strength versus friendships, I seem to recall that my species gained its council seat by defeating the galaxy's most feared warrior in single combat. We can do military strength when needed. We simply choose to prioritize cooperation because it works better long-term. You're welcome to try our approach, or you can keep building enemies and wondering why your empires feel increasingly isolated. The chamber erupted in discussion. Several prey species delegates stood and applauded. Even some predator species showed approval. Hana had turned Kesh's insult into a demonstration of human confidence and strategic thinking. The vote on colonization rights failed. A new proposal, backed by Earth and the Crethean Empire together, established a mixed system where both military capability and demonstrated responsible governance determined colonization rights. It wasn't perfect, but it opened opportunities for developing species while maintaining stability. After the session, Vexthor approached Hana. That response to Kesh was well done. Very Crethean in spirit, though human in execution. I learned from the best, Hana said. You taught me that sometimes you need to show teeth to be taken seriously. And you taught me that teeth are more effective when used strategically rather than constantly, Vexthor replied. Perhaps together our species can teach the galaxy something new. That predator and prey classifications are less important than wisdom and adaptation. That conversation marked a turning point. Over the next months, the Earth-Crethean working relationship deepened. They didn't agree on everything, but they had mutual respect. Other species noticed. Some joined this new approach. seeing benefits in cooperation between former enemies. Others resisted, clinging to old power structures. The galaxy was changing, not quickly and not without resistance, but changing nonetheless. Earth had proven that new species could make a difference. That intelligence and adaptability mattered as much as raw power. That prey could become predators through different paths than evolution alone provided. Hana eventually stepped back from her position as Earth's Council representative, though she remained an advisor. She had proven her point, secured humanity's place among the stars. Now it was time for others to build on that foundation. On her final day at the Sovereign Ring Station before returning to Earth, Hana stood in the observation deck one last time. Vexthor joined her, looking out at the same stars. "Do you regret it?" Vexthor asked. "The path you chose? You could have let the insult pass, avoided the trial, perhaps found an easier way." "No regrets," Hana said. "Sometimes the difficult path is the only one that leads where you need to go. Besides, we both gained something from our fight." "What did I gain?" Vexthor asked. "I lost my seat, my honor, my certainty about how the galaxy works." "You gained perspective," Hana said. "You learned that there are many kinds of strength. That adaptation is survival. Your species will be stronger in the long run because you learned those lessons." Vexthor considered this. "Perhaps, though I still maintain that you got the better part of our exchange. You became a legend. I became a lesson," Hana laughed. "You're still one of the most respected warriors in the galaxy. You just have new things to teach now. That's not so bad." They stood in comfortable silence, two beings from different worlds who had shaped each other's futures through conflict and its aftermath. The galaxy around them continued its slow evolution, moving toward something that might be better than what came before. Not perfect, never perfect, but better. And for humanity, for Earth, for every species learning to navigate this complex galaxy, better was enough. Better was victory. The prey had shown its teeth. The predator had learned new strategies. And the galaxy, slowly but surely, was becoming a place where both could thrive together. Hana returned to Earth as one of the most famous humans in history, the girl who got slapped by the galaxy's greatest warrior and seized his throne before he hit the ground, the diplomat who changed interstellar politics through courage, intelligence, and stubborn refusal to accept humanity's assigned role as insignificant newcomers. She was 26 years old and she had changed the galaxy forever, but she knew the real work was just beginning. Her generation had opened the door. Future generations would walk through it and build the future that humanity deserved. A future where humans were not prey or predators, but simply humans. Adaptable, intelligent, enduring, and always reaching for the stars.